Jai Shri Ram, welcome to Astrology with Abhilasha. Today we are going to discuss about the result of transit of Jupiter into the sign of Pisces, which will be going to happen from 16th April 2022 to 25th April 2023. You might think the transit date a bit different from what generally is seen. That is because I use Chandrahari and Amsha. So these dates are according to that. We will also discuss the transit of Jupiter and also the transit of Saturn. All right. So let's get started with Jupiter. But the most frequently asked question on the transit is uh, that from where to actually see the transit. First and foremost, I must clarify that these results will be pretty much generic because the actual effect of transit depends on the particular horoscope. Nevertheless, a generic overview can be given, which I'll be discussing in the video, and from which point to see the transit is a very frequently asked question. So today I am telling you a very unique set of rule from where you should see the transit. Generally, you must have heard to see it from the ascendant or the moon. But there is also a third parameter from where you can see the transit. It is from the Lord of the moon in D1. From that planet, you should see which house a particular planet is transiting. This gives beautiful result and it is much more accurate. And that is up to you now, which rule you want to apply, whether you want to see it from the ascendant, from the moon. But I would suggest see it from the Lord of the moon. The sign in which moon is placed. Take that sign, see where the Lord is placed, and then check the transit from that particular planet. All right. Now, Jupiter takes almost 12 years to complete the journey across the 12 zodiacs. So it is very beneficial if Jupiter transit the 2nd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and the 11th houses from the ascendant moon or the particular point which I told you. So there can be seen a lot of fructification of event during the transit of Jupiter because it is a slow moving planet. It gives a long span of time for the planet to get activated, and the planet also activates the house because it's a long span of time. That's why Jupiter and Saturn should be seen for the transit more in depth than any other planet. All right. For a complete overview, let's go house-wise. So if Jupiter is transiting your first house, then generally there is a concept that Jupiter is utterly benefic planet, which is also true. But whenever Jupiter transits the first house, it sort of does not land the native into a very benefic situation. This makes the native leave his well-established residence. He can travel or go or relocate to a distant place. Heavy expenditure is also seen during this transit. The person inwardly may dread to see the changes, like change of place, change of occupation, change of the environment, current environment which he or she is living in. So basically, Jupiter in first house takes you out of your comfort zone. But that is for a greater good, because when the Jupiter comes to the second house, it will yield the result of all the efforts which you have done when Jupiter was transiting your first house. Sometimes this also makes the native very apprehensive about the future. There can also be seen some kind of dissatisfaction in the profession, some sort of internal pain or sorrow can also be seen. Now, if you have a relationship which is fleeting and which will not yield you in a good position in long term, such kind of relation can also come to termination. So this in turn be actually benefit in long run. But currently you might feel the pain of separating from a love affair or a relationship, but that gonna be beneficial in long term. All right. Jupiter takes away such kind of relation, especially in the matter of love and affairs, which will not serve you any purpose in long run. So that should be kept in mind. You have to take up it in a good stride. Jupiter disturbs the person's existing environment. It also can show some adverse effect in the functioning, day-to-day functioning also. So it can, to an extent, also hamper your health. But as the transit grows, by which I mean, as the Jupiter gains the degree in that particular house, the effect will start to unfold and you will see the greater good in whatever is happening. So please stay strong. Do not get perturbed or disturbed by the sudden change of events. And please do not write into comments that how negative it is for the first house, because I'm not going to give you a sugar pill here and tell you that, oh, it'll be all great. Yes, because it is transiting in its own house, in its own sign. It can actually curb down some of the maleficence, but whatever is there, I will call a spade a spade. So please be aware of it. In the second house, when Jupiter is transiting, Jupiter helps the person to relax and enjoy the natural environment and conveniences of his life. You've seen people who actually have a lot of materialistic pleasures in their life, but due to the time constraint and other responsibilities, they're not able to actually enjoy them. So this is the time period when Jupiter will be transiting the second house of the native. They will actually enjoy all the hard work which they did when Jupiter was transiting their first house. So this is a good transit. They will acquire more money. Also, this will help you in giving social recognition and popularity. Your adversaries will vanish or you'll defeat your enemies during this transit. So if you have a pending court case, or if you are looking for a better business opportunity, if you are looking to invest in properties, etc., this is a very good transit when Jupiter transits your second house. Whenever Jupiter comes to the second house, it also ensures that it adds up to your family. This means that you can have a new person added to your family, that is by the means of marriage or a birth of a child, etc. That is also seen very frequently. Now, this can also help you in speculative gains, but be very cautious about this. But Jupiter in second house helps you in speculative gains. It can also lead to occasional illness, but that would be nothing to be very worried about. You will sail through. Um, if somebody seeks your advice during this time, they will be highly benefited from it, because whenever Jupiter makes a connection with the second house, the advice of this particular person helps the people around. So, but along with this, I would like to suggest that whenever Jupiter is in your second house, makes a connection with the second house in your natal chart, or even by the transit, you should be very choosy and picky with your words. As we all know, the wisest speak the least. That should be your motto, because your words would be very precious. So be very choosy whom to advise. It can also give rise to compassion within you. You can also take up some charitable activity. Rather, you should. Rather, everybody during this time when Jupiter is transiting the sign of Pisces, everybody should take up some charitable thing and make an effort to contribute to the society. Now, after talking about Jupiter in the second house, let's move to Jupiter in the third house. This will give you an urge to grow, urge to expand. Jupiter denotes expansion, but in which houses? Jupiter does not give expansion in every house. The third house is of your courage, of your efforts, of your enterprise. When Jupiter is associated with the third house, it makes you or provokes you to expand your horizons or to make efforts in a bigger and vast direction. So this is there. It will again encourage you to be philanthropic. Jupiter in third house also denotes that the individual will try to invest a lot during this time, but that can somehow result into a bit of loss or not as desired kind of expenditure. Separation from your near and dear ones can also be seen during this transit of third house. If you are into business, there can be non-cooperation from your business partners or even your life partners, because they will be in your own mind a lot of impact of being righteous. Sometimes being very blunt, being very righteous, and speaking the truth makes you or leaves you in seclusion and isolation. So you should be very watchful about that. Just a moment. Yeah. So that is there for the third house. Again, this can be a very good time if you are trying to relocate during this period. It can be very good. Now, when Jupiter transits the fourth house, again, one will think that transit of Jupiter in the fourth house will be very good. No doubt, but still there will be an amount of turmoil emotionally in your domestic life. There will be a divine urge and a sort of enlightenment. This implies that you will be interested in a lot of religious activities, lot of mantras and tantras, lot of siddhis. This is a very good time to approach spirituality. But when one approaches spirituality or devote a lot of time into the worship of great Lord, it actually disturbs your family life, your fourth and seventh house. So you should be very cautious about maintaining a balance. All right. There will be materialistic affluence, abundance of people who are not your blood relative, but you can get a great spouse during this time. You can meet a great friend during this time, but discord with your blood relations can be seen. There will be a conflict between your inner sense and what you want to achieve materialistically, which I already told you. There will be a tug of war between what your heart wants and what your mind is advising you. There will be, though you will you will receive a lot of materialistic gains, but enjoying them will make you feel a bit shallow. You will try to see the bigger picture of the universe and what is your eternal path. Because of that mindset, you might not enjoy whatever materialistic gains you are having during this transit. So that is there for the people whose Jupiter is transiting in the 4th house. In the 5th house, if Jupiter is transiting, it gives the person, whichever field you are in, even if you are a student, you're a businessman, you are into a job, there will be a streak of creativity into you. If you want to start a new venture, this is the very conducive time to do that. Because Jupiter in 5th house give you enormous kind of creativity, out of the box ideas, and which is also in the good direction. Whenever, even in the natal chart, Jupiter makes a connection with the 5th house, either by aspect or sitting itself in the 5th house, this kind of a person can turn even a basic looking information into something which can actually turn the tables for you. So this is the very right and good time to start a new venture, because the ideas you will be receiving during this time would be for your benefit. Increase in income, psychological fulfillment. If you are struggling with any psychological issue and your Jupiter is transiting your 5th house, you might get the best healthcare for mental issues during this time. So this is a very good transit even for your mental space. Apart from increase in income and prosperity, all round prosperity is assured when Jupiter transits the 5th house. Though the expenditure will be equally increased, but you have substantial amount of funds to, balance it out. You will also crave and rather have intellectual associations with people who are of high intellect during this time. If you want to start something new in the learning space where you want to learn and grow your skill set, this is a very good time for that too as well. So for students, this is a very good time to choose or pick a direction they want to go into. All right. Jupiter in 5th also makes the individual experience an elevated productivity. You can also start studying the occult sciences when Jupiter is transiting your 5th house. If you are looking for a guru, or you want to receive a mantra which actually fructify for you, this can be a wonderful time for that. Rather, the situation or the atmosphere around you will be changed in a manner that you land up in a situation where you receive divine guidance, or your Ishta, you get to know who is your Ishta. This is a very good time for that as well. If you want to remedy anything in your natal chart and Jupiter is transiting your 5th house, it will be very good for you. That remedy will actually give you results. So this is good again for this remedy process also. Now, if Jupiter is transit in the 6th house, now, as we all know, the 6th house also denote your shadow repose. So Jupiter here will first make you realize your inner devils, and then it will land you in a conflict of winning over them. So that is the trait of Jupiter. It illuminates the darkest, deepest places in your horoscope. So when it travels your 6th house, you get to know your other side of the personality, and it gives you a great opportunity to improve as a person, to work for the society. So it can also land you in an emotional purification kind of a scenario, where you want to purify the way you think, the way you upkeep your emotional health. So this is again a very good transit to people who are trying to understand themselves, people who are fighting the shadow repose or any kind of addiction in their life. This can be a good transit, though it can be a bit taxing for the health, but otherwise it is good. It can also produce some kind of temptations in your life, but you will always have an opportunity to let it go and overcome the temptations. Some sort of illness which can stay for a long span of time can also come to the surface. So please take care of your health, maintain a regular regime, exercise, do. Jupiter is also the fresh air in the environment. So taking a brisk morning walk is very good when Jupiter is transiting your 6th house. It also give you a realization that where have you failed in your past years. When Jupiter was transiting your 5th, how many opportunity you actually lost, your 4th, etc. So it will also give you an opportunity to replan and rearrange your life and realize that how much you can achieve, your hidden potential also. It will show you that. It can also make a person feel regretful whenever Jupiter transits your 6th house. So please read good motivating books. Be around people who actually want to motivate you and give you good advices, because this Jupiter transit can be a bit depressive, because it actually shows you in a flashback kind of a scene that how much you have not taken up the opportunities or exercised prompt actions in the past. So that can actually demoralize the person. So be in a good company, read good motivating books, and be self-sufficient and self-motivated, even if you are staying alone. because this is just like your report card. You just see how much marks you are having, and then you improve and learn for the better. That is, in a nutshell, the transit of Jupiter in the 6th house. Now, the transit of Jupiter in the 7th house. It is described as the most poetic transit. It can make you a bit romantic also towards your partner. Along with that, if you have actually progressed spiritually when the Jupiter was transiting your 5th house, and you've learned your lesson when the Jupiter transited your 6th house. So once Jupiter comes to the 7th house, you will be actually able to reap the benefits here of spirituality, of having a harmonious relationship with your spouse. Whenever Jupiter transit your 7th house, a very good remedy is to offer flowers in the temple. So you can do that to accentuate the good effect of Jupiter in the 7th house. The person will enjoy abundant wealth, bed pleasures, good company, good meal, good conveyance, vehicles, etc. The power of speech and intelligence would be to next level. So all things good comes to the transit of Jupiter in the 7th house. But you have to have done your work when it was transiting your 5th and the 6th house. So that is it. Now, when Jupiter transit your 8th house, during the transit of Jupiter in the 8th house, people will think that it won't be a good transit, but it will be similar to what the transit of Jupiter was in the 6th house. It was telling you the fields where you were lacking. Similarly, Jupiter in 8th house works in a mysterious way to be beneficial for you. You might feel that it is creating some kind of disturbance in your life, but that is for a greater good when Jupiter comes to the 9th house. It acts favorably when you are holding on to the path of spirituality. Or this, I also say that this transit of Jupiter in the 8th house is a very apt time to learn occult sciences also, or something which takes you towards the divine, or tries to unfold your own self in front of you. So Jupiter transiting the 8th house, you can have your anchor into spirituality. That will keep you grounded and also give you a hope for a better future. Those who are too deeply interested into the mundane life or the materialistic life will find this transit very difficult to cope up with. So here is the time to realize the importance of the superior world, all right, and be limited in your inclination towards the materialistic side. This can help you. This can be very good time to be physically active towards yoga, etc., towards performing or trying to achieve siddhis as well. Jupiter transit in 8th house can help you in this sphere also. If you are just an average common person who is busy in his or her day-to-day life and do not take out time to realize the spiritual side of the world will find that this time is very fruitless for that person. So that's why I'm trying to tell you to find an anchor in spirituality and staying hopeful for the greater good which is coming for the next transit when Jupiter goes to the 9th house. You might feel unlucky during this time period, but just be assured that things will fall into place soon. You should avoid speculation during this time because it can incur you losses. It can also give you some abrupt and unsteady decisions. Like you might just end up something you were long giving your time into from a long span of time. You just abruptly ends it during this transit. But you should not do that. Be very cautious of sudden surge of emotions when Jupiter is transiting your second house. So be in control of your emotions. For that, to have a sense of what you're doing, yoga, meditation is a wonderful tool. So you can do that. And you can also meditate on Lord Shiva or do any mantra of Lord Shiva during this time period to bless you with the grace of Guru. Try not to skip any activity related to last rites in your household or any activity which is related to the rituals. Whenever Jupiter transits the 8th house, it lands you in a situation where you skip these rituals and then you pay a price for this. So please be present. If you are totally unable to be physically present in the scenario, at least be financially supporting to the family during the tough times to negate all the negativity which you can accumulate during this time period. So Jupiter's transit in the 9th house is very auspicious. The individual is very attracted towards the idea of upliftment of their household. They try to increase their income, which they successfully do so. Not to say that it will be very beneficial for your growth of spirituality as well. More so because it is transiting in your Pisces sign. This growth will come from your within. Sometimes we have to do a remedy because it is pressurizing. The negative events are so pressurizing that we do it because we are bound to. But when Jupiter transits your 9th house, you do it out of your own will. Even if you're having the best time of your life, you will never forget, which you should actually not. Never forget the divine Lord and do good in the section of praying and worshiping. This is a very good time. All-round prosperity is also assured. Success is also guaranteed during this time. The person becomes very gracious and grateful for all the blessing he or she have received throughout his life. And that should be how you behave in this transit. Be thankful for whatever you enjoyed and whatever you had. Good atmosphere at family. if you take up a travel, it will be very good for you. It will result benefit for you. You can also take up higher studies during this time. Moving abroad can also be a good option for you. If you are trying since long, try during this time. It will end up in success for you. Now, when Jupiter transits your 10th house, there can be some addition in the family. Your social circle, your social status will also improve. How the people around you perceive you. You will have a greater atmosphere at your work field, whether it's business or whether it's job. Your performance in your work field will take a high gear during this time. If there is a competition, it is high chances that you will win. There is a lot of sudden urge of going to religious places, pilgrims, etc., which you should take up. You should make up time for traveling to religious places during this time. You will be your best counselor during this time. Good advices, your individual approach will be recognized by the people around you, and you'll be appreciated in whichever task you take up. So it is good. Jupiter in 11th house bestows the native with good happiness. It is the time where you can receive gifts, sudden favors, rise of income, a very cordial relation with your business partners. Your status in the office will also improve whenever Jupiter transits your 11th house, or you'll be at the top gear in your work field. So 10th and 11th are pretty much similar for the work field. Cooperation from friends. If you are into any speculative business, this can give you a lot of gains. Even in personal life, there will be all kind of happiness. Good will come into your married life. It will be very joyful. If you are experiencing some downtime in your married life, this can actually rev up and give you a good time with your spouse. Harmonious and very fruitful journeys. Even if you're not receiving a great amount of materialistic gain, you'll be very content inwardly. So that is a next level of happiness, when you are content from within. So that is going to be there at this transit of 11th house Jupiter. So when Jupiter is transiting your 12th house, you might dissolve your fixed assets during this time. You might sell out a property, might dissolve your fixed deposits, etc. during this time. It can also ensure that you become detached in your relationships. During this period, you will experience bliss in isolation. You would love to stay isolated during this time, and you will need nobody. So this is good for people who want to reevaluate their values, reevaluate how they understand themselves. This is a very good transit. Even for being devoted to the Almighty or doing something philanthropic, this is a good time. You must donate during this time period. As I already said, everybody should make a contribution to the society whenever Jupiter is transiting the sign of Pisces. It will actually give you a certain inner urge to do so. Doesn't matter what kind of person you are, this will be there. This can also bring to the surface some kind of illness, but you will eventually find a good cure. Materialistic pursuits will not be supported during this transit, so please avoid that. As I say, this also give you loss of property, etc. This can actually mean that you are selling out your property. All right, but be very cautious. Don't file any litigation related to property or family feud during this time, because that can lead you in a tough time and won't be favorable for you. So avoid this time period for that. You can also have a change of residence for a short span of time. This change of residence will not be a one where you will be very happy. This can be a forced kind of change of residence due to the conditions which are forcing you to do so. It can also lead you to unnecessary travel. There will be increased sexual urge during this time. Be very cautious not to fall into something which is not accepted in social norms, like falling into extramarital affairs, etc. So be very cautious about that, because eventually it will get you bad name. Once the Jupiter is about to exit your 12th house, it will come to light, definitely. Any kind of extra marital relations will come to light during this time, so avoid that. So that is all for the 12 houses, all about Jupiter. In the next video, I'll be continuing about the transit of Saturn. So all my best wishes for this transit. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.